I don't know how I've made it this long without reading this series, but today is finally the day. We are reading the entire Percy Jackson series. I originally had the idea to read this entire series when the TV show came out, I think like, what, a year or two ago? And I'm just now getting around to it, but better late than never. I literally remember starting the TV show when it first came out and I was like, no, I can't watch this TV show. I have to read the books first. Although I will say I have seen the movies, but I haven't seen them in so long that I probably can barely even tell you the synopsis of what's going on in these books. We are going to start with book number 1, which is The Lightning Thief. Oh, the lighting just got so bad in here. Anyway, book number 1 is The Lightning Thief, and all I know going into this book is that we have Percy, who is our main character, and he's on a school field trip when he finds out that he has some type of powers, and I think he's like half god, which if I remember correctly, I think that makes him a demigod, and so he ends up going to this summer camp to kind of train and hone up his powers, and that is all I remember from this book, and I think that's only because I watched the first 2 episodes of the new TV show, and that's it. So I'm pretty sure that's the only reason I remember anything about the synopsis of this book / movie. So we're gonna just jump right in and see what the hype is all about. I didn't get super far into this book last night. I made it to chapter 3, page 29. And there's something so nostalgic about YA books that were published at this time. It's something about the way they were written and it's so addicting to my brain. So I'm very much enjoying this book right now. I just keep trying to compare the book to the movie, even though it's been so long since I've seen the movie. So whenever anything happens, I'm just like, oh, did this happen in the movie? But anyway, so far I'm really enjoying it. It is written very YA, but like, hey, it is YA, so I'm not faulting it for that by any means. But I'm very into this so far. I'm excited to see where the rest of the book and the entire series goes. I'm not familiar with Greek mythology at all, so hopefully I will learn a thing or two. I just made it to chapter 15, page 219, and I am really enjoying this book so far, but I just have one note, and that is the main plot line of the book. I'm trying to not give anything away, so my wording might be a little weird here, but the main plot line of the book feels too easy, but then at the same time I'm kind of like, well, if things were harder for them, it would make the book a lot slower, because with things being easy for them, they keep encountering these obstacles, and so things are moving at a lot faster of a pace than they would if things were harder for them. I don't know if that really makes sense, but it just feels too easy. And I'm kind of conflicted on that because you don't want it to feel too slow either, but I do feel like there's a happy middle ground, and we're kind of leaning a little bit towards the too easy part of the two halves. So I'm not sure. I am still really enjoying it. Like I said earlier, there's just something so nostalgic about the way that this book is written and just YA books at this time period. Like, when was this published? In my head, it's like early 2000s. Yeah, copyright 2005. So I kind of want to read more YA books from the early 2000s. I don't know. Everything's just better to me from the early 2000s as someone who can't remember the early 2000s at all. Anyways, I'm gonna keep reading. So far, so good. That's just like one little tiny note that I have, but we'll see how the rest of the book goes, and I will update you as I get closer to the end. We have some catching up to do. I finished The Lightning Thief a couple of days ago and I really liked it. It is very YA and very much of its time, and it actually really hit the spot. It was exactly what I needed without knowing that I needed it. And then I immediately watched the movie while doing my weekly meal prep, and I've seen the movie before, but I had no idea how different the movie was to the book, and now I'm intrigued to see if the TV show is similar to the books or if it'll be completely different than both the book and the movie. But what confuses me about this book is that I was planning on rating it a 4-star, but then I watched the movie and now I'm thinking about changing my rating because I was giving this book a lot of grace for being too predictable, because I thought that it was predictable because I had seen the movie before, but now that I've seen the movie again and I've realized how different the movie is from the book, so now I'm all sorts of confused on my rating for this book because, like I said, I was giving it a lot of grace for being predictable. So I don't know, but I did start the second book, which is The Sea of Monsters. I made it to chapter 6, page 65, and it's again giving me that classic YA nostalgic feeling. I'm wondering if these books will all start out at the camp and then we'll kind of move away and do something else. Again, I'm trying to be very vague with this, but it feels like it's going to be a similar setup in this book compared to the first one. I just made it to chapter 7, which is page 232, so I'm very close to finishing this book. Again, similar to the last book, I kind of feel like this book is a little bit predictable, but like I said, it's YA and I'm an adult, so I'm giving it a little bit more grace than I would a typical adult book. So I feel like since I'm an adult and it's YA, that explains at least some of the predictableness, or at least I feel like I need to give the book a little bit more of a break. I will say say, I can see everything so vividly in my head, and it reads so fast. Even though it's taken me a couple of days to get through this book, it does not feel like it at all. And I find myself wanting to read this book, and that's a good sign for me, because a main indicator for me on if I'm liking a book or not is how many times I pick up the physical book versus trying to reach for my phone. So let's finish this bad boy so we can start the next book. Woo woo. I am about to head to the gym, but I wanted to give a quick update first because I finished Sea of Monsters last night, and I actually really liked this book, but it's hard to figure out my rating because I keep comparing it to the first book, and the first book just felt super nostalgic to me because I used to watch the movie as a kid. So I need to not compare the two and just figure out what I want to rate it. I think as of right now, I'm going to give it a 3.5 star. Of course, I'll let you know if that changes. See, but then at 3.5 feels like I'm being too picky, but I did predict a couple of things, but I will say the ending had a slight twist to it that I was not expecting, and I did really enjoy that. I think the ending was one of my favorite parts, and like the quest that they went on in this book has been my favorite so far. I did like the quest in the first book, obviously, but for some reason I really liked the quest in this book. So you know what, maybe I will give this one a 4 star. I'm just extra indecisive today, but also I have been awake for less than 30 minutes, so that's my excuse. Anyways, and then I did start reading The Titan's Curse last night, book number 3, and I am enjoying this so far. I haven't gotten super far into it. I actually don't know how far I am into it, but it's like less than 10% because I started reading it on my Kindle because it was available at the public library. Yeah, my Kindle says I'm literally at the 10% mark. It says I'm on chapter 3, page 33, so I really have not gotten very far into this book at all, but I am enjoying it so far. There's probably not much that I could talk about in this book. Throughout this entire reading vlog, I have been very excited to read, but I feel like I'm extra excited to read this one because this is the first book that doesn't have a movie attached to it, so I know absolutely nothing going into it. Because I'm like 99% sure that I watched The Sea of Monsters growing up. I don't 100% remember, but the book felt very nostalgic, and that could have just been because it's YA and it was written what, like early 2000s, 2010s time, something like that, and that is just a very nostalgic time to me when it comes to reading YA books. I don't know, but either way, I'm very excited to read The Titan's Curse, and then today is actually Saturday, so I'm sure at some point this weekend I will watch The Sea of Monsters because I'm so intrigued to compare the books to the movie and then also compare the movie to the TV show. So maybe we'll start the TV show at some point in this reading vlog as well. I don't know, maybe not. If I don't, I'll update you in future vlogs. Anyways, I'm gonna head to the gym. I will probably walk and read a little bit on my Kindle as well while I'm there. My favorite sound. Let's go to the gym, let's go get away. I did not mean to match this book today, but it's kind of fun. I just made it to chapter 14, which is page 199. And literally as I'm reading this, I can feel myself wanting to fixate on Greek mythology. So I'm already thinking about what other books I can read and add to my TBR, specifically fiction books that have these Greek mythology elements in them. I already have a couple in mind that I definitely want to read. But before I started reading these books, I was so intimidated by Greek mythology because I think I said earlier, I'm not familiar with Greek mythology at all. So I figured that would be a little bit of a challenge for me, but so far it hasn't been a challenge at all. And I don't know if that's just because these are YA or just the way it's written, but it does a great job of explaining Greek mythology without it feeling too much like I'm in class or just like it's being explained to me simply as the reader. Like it's integrated into the story, especially because Percy doesn't know a lot of this stuff, so it's almost like it's being explained to Percy instead of being explained to us. Anyway, now that I'm further into the book, I am enjoying it. Like so far I might like the second book a little bit more, but these two books are so different in my head. Like the second book I feel like focused a lot on relationships because you're introduced to a new character, and I really liked that character, and you see a lot of his relationship with Percy, and that's definitely not the whole book. There's a lot of action in that book, but I feel like this book has been kind of non-stop action and the relationships have kind of taken a back seat, especially because there's some mini feuds in this book. Like there's some characters in this book that don't get along with the other characters, so this book so far feels a lot more action-packed than the books have been so far. And I remember saying when I was reading either the first book or the second book that I felt like things were just too easy for them, and I'm not getting that feeling at all with this one, so that is great. I am going to keep reading. I think Jack and I are going to do a little date night tonight, but hopefully I will finish this book in the next couple of days. Since the last time we spoke, I have finished The Titan's Curse, and I liked it, but I don't think it's my favorite because I finished this book a couple of days ago, and I really had to think about what even happened in this book, which is not a good sign for me. Normally when a book is kind of run of the mill or it's a book that I didn't really like, a lot of the times I will kind of forget it. It's kind of like my brain will be like, okay, I didn't love that book, Control Alt Delete it. It's out of my brain. And I'm not saying I forgot what happened in this book, I just had to take a second to think about it. And also, I know I've said this before, but the series as a whole seems very formulaic to me, but I do think that's sometimes common in series like this. But there was actually a Greek myth talked about towards the end of this book that I actually knew, which I said before, I don't know much about Greek mythology, so I was really surprised by that. Overall, I had fun with it, but it's definitely not my favorite of the series so far. And then I did actually also start the Battle of the Labyrinth. I am pretty far into this. I'm on chapter 10, which is page 163, so I'm almost halfway through. And even though the structure and formula is very similar, it feels slightly different in this one. I kind of feel like we have more going on. It seems like there's our main plot line and then a subplot as well, which I think that might be what the rest of the series was lacking for me. I needed a little bit more going on other than just the main plot point, mostly just when it got to the point where I was starting to feel like things were getting a little bit repetitive. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm really enjoying this one so far. And then I also wanted to mention I did watch The Sea of Monsters, and again, I was shocked with how different the book was to the movie, but these movies are just so nostalgic for me, but they just aren't like the books at all. So that made me super curious about the TV show. So I did end up watching the first 3 or 4 episodes of the TV show, and the TV show is more similar to the books than the movie is. I think the TV show took a lot more elements from the books than the movie did, and I'm super curious on if the movies got any backlash because they were so different from the books and that's why they stopped making the movies. But I'm definitely going to keep watching the TV show, especially the later seasons, because I'm excited to see those adapted, because obviously we haven't had a screen to TV adaptation for those yet. But anyways, I am excited to watch more of the TV show. I'm excited to read more of this book. I'm in a good reading mood right now. I just finished The Battle of the Labyrinth. This one might be my favorite so far. Bonus points for the ending because I did not see that coming. I liked the different subplots that we got, the different characters that we met. I just feel like this book gave me more than the previous books did, and that's exactly what I needed to keep me engulfed in the series. Also, my air just kicked on, so I'll try to make this update fast because I feel like the air is always pretty loud. But I was just saying I really liked this book. I'm gonna give it a 4-star, and I'm very excited to see what happens in the next book as we wrap everything up. I'm expecting more action and more conflict, so we'll see where things go. Speaking of the next book, I did get 1 chapter into the next book, which is The Last Olympian, and I liked this first chapter, but obviously so much can change from this point, so we'll see. I read a lot in the past couple of days. I made it to chapter 17, which is page 296, so I'm pretty far into the book, very close to finishing it. I just have a couple of things I want to talk about before I finish this book. I haven't updated much because I'm trying to keep this video as spoiler-free as possible, but like I said, I have a few notes. This is one of the first times in this entire series where we've had a lot of interaction with the rest of the campers, and I really like that. So we're meeting a lot of new characters, but also Percy has known these characters throughout the entire series because obviously they all go to this Camp Half-Blood together, and I really appreciate how this one is very different. I know I talked about before feeling like these books were very formulaic and they were just feeling a little bit too similar to each other. This one is very different, so I do appreciate that. I feel like I really needed something to be different. At this point in the series, I just needed a little change. This is book 5, so I really appreciate that. And there's only one bad thing that I have to say about this book, and that is the number of fighting scenes in this book is insane. Now, we've had fighting scenes throughout the entire series and they haven't bothered me, but when there's this much fighting, I don't like it. And I already knew that about myself. That's one of the things I struggle with the most when reading a fantasy series. There's always so much fighting in the last book, and that's happening here as well. I just don't like to read fight scenes, and because I don't like to read them, I end up feeling a little bit bored. And unfortunately, that's what's going on right now. But I'm trying to be optimistic and have some hope and end this series off on a good note. I just finished The Last Olympian. I feel like I gave most of my thoughts in the last clip because obviously there's not much I can say that's spoiler free, but I did guess a big plot point in this book, which was really upsetting. So with that in mind and the number of fighting scenes in this book, I think I'm gonna give this one a 3-star. I feel bad. That doesn't mean I didn't like the book. I just didn't love it. It wasn't my favorite of the series. I think this one was actually my least favorite of the series. But I think overall I would rate this series a 3.5 star. I definitely think I'll come back to the first 2 books. Those ones are just super nostalgic to me, and I did really like the 4th book. I think that one was my favorite. Let me know what other popular book series you think I should read in a video format like this. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!